Okay.
All right. Thank you
Good
for
to see
being
you,
here,
Jesse.
Greg.
My pleasure.
I'm here with Gubernatorial, is that correct?
Yes.
Candidate Greg Gianforte. He's running for election here for the governor of the state of Montana. And we're going to talk about some of the attack ads that you as voters have probably heard about. The first one I want to start with is the outsourcing of jobs, because I actually heard that coming into work this morning, that you as a business owner was a huge advocate of outsourcing jobs. Tell Montana voters, because a big part of your campaign has been job creation.
Sure.
Tell Montana voters, how you feel and what is your stance on outsourcing.
Well, I mean, our record's really clear. We created one of the largest commercial employer here in Gallatin Valley, and I'm proud of our record. We built a software company. My wife and I, we started in our home here in Bozeman, just the two of us with $5,000, and the business grew to 1,100 employees. And I'm proud of our record. And honestly, for me, I've realized, having stepped into the public arena here, that this gets really vile.
Yeah.
And my opponents are not encumbered by the truth, and they're attacking my character and our accomplishments because they're career politicians and they're trying to defend and preserve their positions. So for me, I've already accepted the fact that I'm doing this, but for the 550 people that worked at Right Now Technologies, and now many of them work at Oracle here in the Valley, it's an insult to even make these accusations. In fact, when Steve Daines worked for me for 12 years at Right Now Technologies, he ran for office back in 2012. We've vetted this argument already. In fact, I have an apology letter from the Democrat Party saying that this charge of outsourcing is not correct. So they're just trying to regurgitate some stuff that's already been settled.
And I noticed that, like, when candidates for any office run attack ads, they spend so much time talking bad about the opponent, but don't say anything positive about themselves. It's like, well, he does this, but vote for me, and there's no clarification.
But that's the question people should be asking is, what is my opponent's plan for creating better jobs? I've actually created high-wage jobs here in the state, and as I've now driven 56,000 miles all over the state, been staying in people's homes. This is the issue. We are 49th in the country in wages today for overall, and 50th for millennials. And I want my kids around the table on Sunday afternoon. My wife and I have raised our 4 kids here in Bozeman, and I think that's the aspiration that many Montana families have. But with anti-business policies that don't let the private sector prosper, things aren't going to change.
Okay. And I had another question, because one of the big things in your platform is a lot of highly educated people are leaving the state of Montana for jobs elsewhere where they can get paid a decent wage. One thing that I experienced personally is cost of living. Mm-hmm. And I just moved up here 3 months ago, considering buying a house, but when I look at real estate listings, I mean, that's so far out of my league. I can't afford to live in Bozeman, Montana. Like, do you have any plan to sort of regulate inflation and affordable housing, so that people that actually do get a degree at Montana State, when they turn around and graduate, they can afford to live here?
Well, I'd like to see you earn more. I mean, that's going to be my focus for all Montanans. I think that if we want more high-wage jobs, we've got to create jobs in industries that have higher wages. And this is where I think we've missed it a little bit. When we first started our business here in Bozeman, I mean, honestly, there were shops on Main Street that were boarded up 20 years ago. And we started to bring these high-wage jobs into town, and our average wage at Right Now Technologies here in Bozeman was almost $90,000 a year.
Wow, that's impressive.
And average, that was the average wage. Some people made quite a bit more, some made a little less, but when you earn a wage like that, you can buy a house. In fact, my son graduated from MSU just a couple of years ago, and just last night, we had dinner for the first time in a home he just bought here in Bozeman. He's 3 years out of school.
That's
so this is achievable. This is something we can do. And before people jump to the conclusion that, well, Greg, that's fine for all those techies out there, but what about the rest of us? You know, in our business at Right Now Technologies, only about 10% of our expenses were software development. All the rest were sales, marketing, administration, all sorts of different things. And then when one of those high-wage jobs came into the community, the first thing the family did was buy or build a home. And that created construction jobs, and then real estate jobs, and then they enrolled their kids in the local schools, and that add, you know, it added vibrancy. This is why
it's all relative. If one thing works, it's sort of like trickle down. It's like a domino effect. Okay, if people can afford to live here, then they're enrolling their kids in schools, and it's
correct.
sort of.
And this is, I mean, we live in an economic oasis here in Gallatin County. I mean, it's a stronger economy than we really have anywhere else in the state, in large part because of this tech boom.
Yeah.
That's complemented. What really breaks my heart is as I've been traveling around, you go up to Roundup or Baker or Weibo, and you know, our farmers keep getting better at what they do, and the tractors keep getting bigger, and a family has 3 kids, 1 gets the farm and 2 have to leave.
Yeah.
And it's ripping families apart. And we need to work on methods that allow Montanans who have moved away to come back home again. And this is why I'm such a strong proponent for telecommuting. I was with a gentleman up in Roundup just recently, a state representative, and I had handed him one of the invitations that we mailed out to almost 20,000 Montanans last year, inviting them to come home and bring a job with him. And he told me he gave one to his daughter in Lewistown. And she went online and looked for one of these career positions with a national firm, firms like American Express and Oracle and others. She doubled her pay.
And got to come back home to Montana.
Well, she was in Lewistown. She got a new job that allowed her to work for a national firm from Lewistown over the internet. She works from a corner of her home there.
Wow.
And she doubled her pay. So
it's like the American dream, right?
What people don't know is that today Montana is the #1 state in the country for telecommuting. So this is a way we can bring people back and bring vibrancy into our community. We have a lot of telecommuters right here in the valley. And this is a model we can use to complement our ag and natural resources based industries with a new complement, so maybe we can keep that family together in rural Montana.
And you're a man in the field of technology,
Mm-hmm.
and I've heard you advocating for families in coal strip and coal mining.
Mm-hmm.
What is your stance on renewable energy? Because there is a lot of landscape in Montana that's ideal for wind farms, ideal for solar panels. Do you see that as a future prospect in Montana, and would you work towards more renewable energy if you were elected governor?
Yeah, I would. I mean, I'm in all of the above on energy. I think if you look at what's going on right now, however, we're using carrots for renewable energy, tax credits and subsidies for solar and wind, and we're using a stick on coal, right? So I believe in a level playing field. I personally believe if we apply American ingenuity to coal, we can sequester the CO2, we can burn it cleanly. That today, 40% of our power in North America comes from coal. And in a certain sense, the baby's getting thrown out with the bathwater. There is a war on coal. The EPA has come after it, but the EPA themselves have said if we shut down every coal-fired plant in North America, between now and the year 2100, the environment will be 0.02 of a degree cooler. Now, the problem—
So it would really make a difference.
Well, the thing that is even more absurd is that the margin of error on that study is 0.04 of a degree. So we're willing to get negligible return, and in exchange, you have to look at the price. If we shut down Colstrip, Montana loses 7,100 jobs.
Oh yeah.
State revenue goes down by $150 million. That money could be used for schools and infrastructure, and everyone's electric bill will go up by 16%. And if we get a substantial change in electricity supply, this starts to challenge the economic viability of our refineries and our mines. And if they start going out of business in a ripple effect following this these environmental extremists shutting down Colstrip, it's going to be catastrophic from an economic perspective. And this is the thing, this is a big difference between me and my opponent, because my opponent, the group that actually sued to shut down Colstrip, 5 of their board members have funded his campaign. I've said I won't take any special interest money because personally, I think like a lot of people, I'm sick and tired of special interests making the decisions up in Helena and in Washington. That's why I've said I won't take any special interest money. It's also a reason why, for me, I'm running because I want to create better outcomes for all Montanans. And it's also the reason and my wife have been incredibly blessed. We've prospered here. And I feel an obligation to serve and to give back if Montanans want me. That's why I've also said that I'll give my salary to scholarships for veterans and lower income Montanans because...
See, and that's something your opponent hasn't offered to do.
Well, that is true. You know, this is about, for me, this is about service. And but there's a number of issues there. And again, I want to put forward a positive message about the potential of Montana. Unfortunately, even with the rich natural resources we have and the work ethic, which is unmatched, we saw that in our business. We're 49th in the country in wages, and our kids are leaving. They become our most precious export. And I think we can do better. And I know most Montanans, as I've traveled the state, sense that. They believe that that's the case. But we need new leadership up in Helena.
Okay, do you have time for a couple more questions? I've got
Sure.
2 more questions. Another thing that's been in your opponent's ad is about you trying to keep Montanans out. The privatization of land and public land, and I've heard a couple different stories on it. But just so that people in Montana know, because when they hear those ads on TV, you don't get a chance to rebut it. They don't get to hear, the truth per se.
Yeah.
And I've heard the accusations are not true.
Yeah.
And I just want to give you an opportunity to sort of clear the air and let voters in Montana know the true story about what happened, because I heard they're taking something that was very small and turning it into something.
Well, you're right on that. So I appreciate the opportunity to explain it. I'm in Montana because of our public lands. We spent all the summers raising our 4 kids here back on public land in the back country. Susan and I are blessed. We have the closest public fishing access to downtown Bozeman. In fact, many of you have probably fished there. It's right on Manley Road, north of town. If it weren't raining today, there'd be 3 to 5 cars parked out there. We did have a little dispute with FWP back in 2007 or so. It had nothing to do with access. They got a survey wrong. They thought an easement was in one location. We knew it was in another location. Unfortunately, it took 14 months to get them to come out to the property and walk it with us. When they did, in 1 hour, they said, "Oh, you're right, we're wrong, we'll update our records." At no point was anybody ever blocked access to the East Gallatin River, and never did we seek to block access. It was really a misunderstanding and a survey error.
So it's sort of like a reestablishment of a property line is all that it was?
Essentially. Yeah, we
Well
bought...
done. I've been out in my backyard with a metal detector looking for...
Well, it's even simpler than that. The FWP thought the fishing easement was here. We knew it was here. And we walked the property, and they said, oh, you're right. So the easement is still in the same location it's always been in. People still access the river the same place they have for decades. No change.
Okay. And my last question, another thing, and I think all of the attack ads that are geared against you end with this, but it's Greg Gianforte, not from Montana, not for Montana. I went to school here at Montana State 12 years ago. I remember right now being out on South 19. You've been here a really long time, and your kids were born here?
Yep. Our youngest was born here.
Okay.
So we've been in the same home in Bozeman for 21 years. We've raised our family here in Montana. I first came to Montana 40 years ago in 1976 on a junior high school science trip. And actually I had
Fell in love.
Exactly right. 4 people on that trip moved to Montana. I grew up in Pennsylvania, just west of Philadelphia, and fell in love and came out here. It's kind of interesting. You mentioned Susan and I started Right Now Technologies in our home. You remember it out on South 19th.
Yeah.
When I was creating jobs here in Bozeman, you know where my opponent was? He was a lawyer in New York City and Washington, D.C. So what you learn in politics is up is down and down is up. So I appreciate your desire to seek the truth, and I would encourage voters to do the same thing.
Well, I just think, people need an opportunity to know, and when you hear those ads, you hear one side of things.
Yeah.
And You know, I wanted to give you an opportunity to come in here and let Montana voters know that, and I've met you before, I met you at the Big Sky Country State Fair. Every experience that I've had with you, you've been, you know, a stand-up guy, a great guy. And so I just wanted to give you an opportunity to sort of clear the air and level the playing field a little bit.
I appreciate it. And with me, what you see is what you get. You know.
And one more thing, like people in my generation, a lot of my friends, not only the governor race here in Montana, but the presidential race, a lot of people are thinking about not voting.
Mm-hmm.
Express the importance of voting and going out and casting your vote in November, because people think, oh, well, if I don't vote, then...
Yeah, so it's extremely important. If you're not registered, I encourage you to get registered, get smart on the issues, and go make a decision. I mean, I think that this presidential race hasn't turned out the way any of us would have expected it, but it is a monumental race. It's going to determine who gets appointed to our Supreme Court going forward, and I would encourage you to learn about the issues and get out there and vote. And for our state as well, we have a very clear distinction in this gubernatorial race. We have a career politician who's been plagued with corruption issues. He's lost $1 billion off the state balance sheet. He's been flying around to rock concerts at taxpayer expense. The state revenues have fallen off a cliff. He's preserved our position in 49th nationally in wages so that we don't earn as much money. He's vetoed gun rights bills. He's vetoed tax reduction bills. And on the other side, you know, I'm a business guy, and that's a decision you can make. I'm going to bring common sense, business experience to improve outcomes for all Montanans. So you got to vote, otherwise you don't have a voice.
It's very true. Greg Gianforte, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming in, and get out there and